Well, hello everybody. At the request of Corey of Muse Talks and many others, I will now be explaining to you what a globalist is and why we should oppose the United Nations. Alright, so the format for this video will be as follows. I will start by telling you what a globalist believes. I will then get into how we are slaves to currency and how we can free ourselves from corrupt governments through crypto coins. Then I will move on to my final topic, secret societies, government surveillance, and how it all links back to the United Nations and globalist pedophile cults. I say we should open up with what our globalist overlords at Google have to say about globalism. Proponents of globalism believe in global citizenship. That is, the problems of humanity can be resolved with democratic globalism. Democratic globalism is the idea that all people, no matter where they live, and that universal freedom and human rights can be fostered for all mankind. Now, the critical thinkers in the audience have already been tipped off. That sounds very wishy-washy. Who could ever oppose globalists? You see, that is only a minor manipulation they have inflicted upon society. There are countless examples of things. In truth, trying to find information on what globalism is and what globalists believe is quite difficult. In fact, they actively demonize anyone who talks about it. So you can trace the roots of globalism, probably as far back as colonial times, spreading of global trade across the world. That is where the concept of globalism came from, the possibility of a one-world government. See, globalism can be summed up as Neo-Marxism, but people fail to realize that it's already in power, and they have plans that are on a global scale already being enacted. You see, the proponents of Neo-Marxism have taken Karl Marx's original concept, expanded it onto a global stage, and now seek to have a revolution without borders, a complete and total political upheaval across the planet. You see, the globalists really started to come into power around the late 1800s, going into the times of World War II and the Cold War. To set an exact date would be probably impossible, as the transition was slow and truly the people could never have seen it coming because of how slowly it occurred over 100 years or so. Now I'm going to play you a speech about globalism from a man named Sir Oswald Mosley. Now I know what people who are educated are going to say. He's a fascist. Yes, he is a fascist. He's also correct in this instance, and he's an excellent public speaker. So we're going to hear what he has to say, and keep all that other stuff in mind as he says it.
Africa, like the other poor devils in China, India, and Japan, a great new field for sweatshops to be opened up, so that these new industries which we're creating in Britain today will be destroyed as the old industries were. Simplified, rationalized machinery with a few white surveyors, and then the masses of cheap colored labor torn off the land and taken into the sweatshops to work and labor and cough their guts out with tuberculosis until they too are thrown on the scrap heap of the sweatshops. Is that worthy of Britain? Is that to be the future of Europe? And is this competition to be organized within our European Brotherhood, bringing in these sweat fields in Africa into our Europe civilization so that the financial power in one European country can use it against the financial power in another? All the great financial central power of the world, now shifted from the city of London to Wall Street, New York, shall be able, on the mass of money, of wealth, and of power which it brings to it, again and again to exert its influence in politics, until, as you see today, it is childish nonsense to say that a British government rules Britain. It's nothing to do with British government or the British people. The government of the world is the financial government, the power of money and of money alone.
So let's talk about money and how we're all slaves to currency. If you want proof of this, look no further than currency manipulation. More specifically, let's talk about George Soros, an admitted Nazi collaborator and currency manipulator that should be in prison for terrorism, undermining the sovereignty of nations. How did George Soros break the Bank of England? In Britain, Black Wednesday, which occurred on September 16, 1992, is now known as the day when speculators broke the pound, which is a euphemism created to describe the moment in time which they came together to force the British government to pull the pound from the European exchange rate mechanism. Joining ERM was part of Britain's effort to help the unification of the European economies. However, in the imperialistic style of old, it became clear that Britain had tried to stack the deck. Black Wednesday is arguably a consequence of this effort. Although it stood apart from European currencies, the British pound had shadowed the German mark in the period leading up to the 1990s, which unfortunately left Britain with low interest rates and high inflation. Britain entered the ERM with hopes of keeping its currency above the 2.7 German marks to the pound, which was fundamentally unsound, mainly due to the fact that Britain's inflation rate was many times that of Germany's. The underlying problems inherent in the pound inclusion into the ERM was compounded by significant economic strain resulting from Germany's reunification. This, in turn, put pressure on the mark as the core currency for the ERM. The drive for European unification also hit bumps along the road during the passage of the Maastricht Treaty, which was meant about to bring the euro. Speculators began scrutinizing ERM, causing them to start wondering how long fixed exchange rates could fight natural market forces. Spotting the writing on the wall, Britain upped its interest rates to the teens in an effort to attract more people to the pound. Unfortunately, speculators such as George Soros began to heavily short the currency. Consequently, the British government gave in and withdrew from the ERM once it became clear it was losing billions of pounds in its attempt to artificially buoy its currency to a higher level. People talk about billionaires stealing their wealth. You can't get much more blatant than that. And there he is, supporting the United Nations, the European Union, and other such globalist infiltrated organizations. And we'll get to them shortly. The only way to free ourselves from government is to adopt cryptocurrency into our daily lives, not Libra. Libra isn't the Orwellian dystopian version of things like Bitcoin. You see, government will never be able to collect income taxes. They will not know what you are doing with your money if you use privacy coins. Doing so will take all of the globalist power away. Now that I've established how the globalists run on money and enslave us through the power of currency, I would like to get into secret societies, and I will be playing another speech by JFK.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment, for we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And lo and behold, shortly thereafter, he was assassinated by the CIA. You see, the CIA, the FBI, MI6, KGB remnants, SVR, all of them are in a collective conspiracy to spy on us, to document every word, thought, and action. And the worst part is, they admit it, openly, and everyone calmly accepts it. And it's not just the intelligence agencies that have been compromised. They have compromised the militaries of the world. The Army, the Navy, the Air Force, from the ground up have been infiltrated by the globalists.
My fellow Americans, This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
With the intelligence agencies and the militaries of the world all in lockstep, all they needed was a soul-binding agent to keep them together. So whatever the United Nations was created for and its original purpose is no longer relevant. It has evolved, along with the European Union, to be the centralized base for them to create a one-world government, owned and operated by the elite of society. The United Nations continuously pushes a idea of global commune, a world without borders, actively attempting to tear down every nation's borders to allow the free flowing of people. They do this to create chaos, to weaken us as a unit, in order to establish their one world government without us even realizing it's happening. You see, it becomes very clear, the more you dig into this, the entire planet is in a state of Cold War right now between the globalists and those who seek to maintain their freedom and their sovereignty. And make no mistake, the globalists have had victories throughout the years. Look no further than when the Chinese government in exile in Taiwan was removed from the seat on the United Nations and replaced by the Chinese communists that have seized power in the nation. The United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2758 was passed October 25th, 1971. It legitimized the Chi-Coms on a global stage and gave them the power they needed to commit atrocities. You see, China is the perfect example of what the future awaits for the world if the globalists actually achieve complete and total victory. Over there, they have concentration. You see, the globalists want these camps established worldwide in order to get into the organ trafficking market. Each person is a vat of blood and organs worth $500,000, and babies are worth $750,000. And that is what the globalists see you as: blood and organs to be harvested, cattle, labor to be used in their war games against each other. And to loop it back to my original point, that we are slaves to currency, the United Nations and European Union have made it their point to involve themselves in the economic interests of individual countries to control currency, because currency does make the world go round, and they know it. But the other thing that makes the world go round, the thing that influences the future, is education, schools, controlling what the youth believe. Oh, but don't worry, they've got that under control as well, as they set up what are essentially brainwashing stations for our youth, so that way they can make little neo-Marxist slaves to do their bidding and establish their one world government for them. And I'm hardly the only one who knows this. There are forces within the United Nations attempting to combat this. Now, before I play my next clip, I don't care what your politics are, unless you are a complete unrelenting Stalinist. You do not support the globalists. You do not want the globalists in power. So, with that in mind, allow me to play another speech.
The free world must embrace its national foundations. It must not attempt to erase them or replace them. Looking around and all over this large, magnificent planet, the truth is plain to see. If you want freedom, take pride in your country. If you want democracy, hold on to your sovereignty. And if you want peace, love your nation. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbors, and honor the differences that make each country special and unique. It is why we in the United States have embarked on an exciting program of national renewal.
Now, within the actual globalist organizations themselves, the very top of it is controlled by a cult. Now, I do not believe this. Okay, this is what the globalists and the elite of society believe. They believe that by ritually sacrificing molested children, they can extend their life, perhaps even achieve immortality, and at least heal their failing bodies. The latest globalist pedophile cult to be exposed comes from no other than Jeffrey Epstein. Many of his victims claim to have experienced cult-like activities. He was murdered in prison for his various connections to politicians, to billionaires, to celebrities. It is very clear now who he is in league with through his black book, and who are they in league with. And then it gets to the point where you have to wonder, where does this end? How many pedophiles are actually out there? How many of them are in power? And how many of them believe that by ritually sacrificing children, that they can achieve some divine state? For more proof to back up what I'm saying, a journalist by the name of Alex Jones stalked, essentially, some CEOs, some politicians, to a compound known as Bohemian Grove. Once there, he filmed them sacrificing things to an owl idol while performing some strange pagan ritual and burning an effigy. I will play that footage for you right now. To summarize, a globalist is someone attempting to establish a one-world government by controlling us via our own currency. The globalists are oftentimes pedophiles in cults that believe that by ritually sacrificing their molested victims, they can achieve immortality. Anyone who digs too deeply into this generally ends up being stalked by the government, having satellite radiation inflicted upon them, voice-to-skull technology, and various other manipulation and torture tactics unleashed upon them. Now, I hope this video cleared up any misunderstandings anyone may have had. When I call someone a globalist, this is what I mean. Now, if someone were to ask me what a globalist is, again, I will probably go ahead and direct them to this video, as I feel I have covered it extensively enough that people can get the general idea. So, thank you all for watching this far. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as is tradition, and I will see you all next time.